Right, so hello everyone. As usual, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on whichever part of the world you're in. And welcome to the fourth session of the Telos and Memoi Bootcamp. Happy to have you here as always. And just before we begin, a quick reminder, a number of you have been able to reach out to me with regards to forming up teams for your specific hackathon, for the specific hackathon happening next week, and also in terms of any advice that they may need. If you're part of the community, I've been able to share the links to my calendar, so those who maybe would want maybe a brief 10-15 minute session just to discuss more about the project and also share any challenges that they may have, feel free and open. Just a reminder for those of you who are joining us for the first time as well, the hackathon will be commencing on Monday, which is the 13th, all the way through to the 15th of November. So all of you guys who are interested in blockchain, tech, and are really excited to build something cool and exciting, you're welcome. The registration is still open. It will be closing on Monday. And from then on, we'll just begin building our specific projects as well. With regards to today's session, I wanted to specifically talk about the more technical side of actually building on Telos. So we'll just be looking at how do we set up our development environments, how do we go about creating a wallet that can interface to the Telos EVM, how do we fund our wallet, then also just a brief introduction into Remix, how it looks, how it works, the different things that you can do with it as well, and maybe test out a few smart contracts here and there as well. For tomorrow's session, we'll go in depth into how we actually write a smart contract, deploy it, and integrate it with a basic front end just to see how that can also work. So, just before I begin today's session as well, just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Telos team. They also have their own community groups on Telegram and Discord as well, so I'll also be sharing the links to that on the chat as well. So with that, I think we're good to go. So first things first, just a quick recap of what we've been able to cover during the week. I remember on Monday when we were talking with JT, we were able to discuss what exactly is Telos, what gives it a distinct advantage over other blockchain networks that we have around in the ecosystem. We also managed to talk about, even in the EVM ecosystem specifically, Telos actually does have some key advantages. For example, how there's a set gas fee that's implemented in the EVM smart contract on the native network, as we mentioned before, as well as the fact that there's no front running with regards to transactions, meaning that you can't be outbid when you're trying to make a transaction as well, and the processing speed is actually pretty fast enough such that you don't even have that time to try and manipulate that whole functionality. We also went through a brief architecture of how the Telos EVM is structured from the basic Ethereum EVM, which we were able to discuss, as well as a couple of additional features that are added in the Telos EVM, just to make it more unique and beneficial for developers within the same space. We managed to talk about how we set up accounts on Telos. We also managed to talk about how different types of wallets that you can use to interact with it as well, and also more info about the utility of the Telos token specifically. And the reason for this is because when you look at other cryptocurrencies, not a lot of them have that benefit in terms of their token actually being able to be used within that same network and within the same ecosystem and community as well, which I think is very important. Then we also talked about the governance and consensus in terms of how do we make sure that the blockchain remains democratized and fair for everyone. We talked about why Telos is built using the distributed proof of stake and how exactly it's different from maybe something like a proof of work on Bitcoin or a basic proof of stake like what Ethereum has moved into in the recent years as well. So that was just a quick recap of what we've been able to capture, and as always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well, so we can be able to talk to answer them and actually interact more with you as well. So with that, I think we'll just get started. Let me just share my screen as well, so we can also be able to just see how exactly do we set up a wallet, first things first, in the Telos ecosystem. So as we mentioned before, there are different types of wallets that we can interact with on Telos. And the one that I'd like to focus on today is MetaMask specifically. So how that would work is in terms of you can use the browser extension on any browser you're using, whether it's Chrome or it's Firefox as well. Personally, for me, I'm using Chrome. So let me just set this up so you can be able to see what I'm seeing. Yeah, so once you install MetaMask, this is basically what you're able to see. Be able to see the different accounts that you have and the potential networks that you can interact with as well. So I've already added the Telos EVM testnet. What I can do is I'll just remove it and see how we can actually go about reconnecting it as well, just so that everyone can be on the same page. But actually, no, I don't think that's necessary. I think I'll just go through with it as is, but I'll just go take you through the specific steps. So if you want to basically create or have your own MetaMask wallet, you can install it as a browser extension. So if you go to your extension, then you manage them specifically, you'll find that you'll have extensions that are listed there for you. So for example, if I click manage, I have a number of extensions already installed in mine. So for example, if you search for MetaMask, you'll find something like a pop-up like this. For mine, it's giving me the option to remove it since it's already installed, but it's basically an EVM compatible wallet that we'll be using for this specifically in the lab. So if you go ahead and install it, you'll just see a pop-up sign up here, just like I have in mine. And if I click this, I've already logged in, but for you, if it's your first time using MetaMask, you'll find that it's going to prompt you to maybe create an account and input a specific seed phrase. Then once you have that seed phrase, just make sure to write it down somewhere so you don't forget it. And also, another thing that I would like to mention with regards to MetaMask is once you do that, you also have a password that basically helps you lock or unlock your wallet depending on what you need. So as you see for mine, these are the current Telos tokens that I have on my specific wallet. And this is for this account that I have access to here. So I have 2 Telos accounts that I've created. I'll use the second one to go through how you can go about funding your specific wallet with the Telos tokens, because you will need them in order to maybe publish your smart contracts onto the network, and also to interact with them. Maybe you want to mint some tokens or something like that. So that's why these accounts are important. So what I'll do is I think I'll just add another account. Maybe I'll just call it Telos 3. So we're gonna be using it in terms of, I'll be using one to publish my smart contract, that being the second account, and then I'll be using this for any other interaction we'll be having with the labs as we move forward as well. So, like I mentioned, it's important for us to be able to add the Telos network to your MetaMask wallet even before we receive tokens. So how I went about doing that is you'll find that there's a website that we basically call chainlist.org. Sorry, seems to be having a network issue. Oh, sorry, it's a typo even. Let me just fix that. Yeah, chainlist.org. So what this site does is it lists a number of networks that are EVM compatible. So you'll find that you'll see, for example, here there's Arbitrum, there's BNB, Smart Chain, and the likes, as well as Polygon mainnet as well. So if you want to add basically your wallet, as you can see, mine is already connected. But what you can go ahead and do is you can just search for Telos. Then it will list all of these networks here for you. So since I'm only seeing the mainnet, if I want to be able to view the specific testnet, I'll just check this box here that says include testnets. Once I do so, the Telos EVM testnet will pop up here. And if I click on add MetaMask, it usually gives you a pop-up. Since I've already added the testnet, I can go ahead and add the mainnet as well, just to show you how it looks specifically. So if I do that, you'll find the MetaMask pop-up appearing on the screen. Then from here is when you'll see these details. So as you see, there's the network name, the Telos EVM mainnet, then the URL that will be used basically for the RPC calls within the mainnet. Then there's a chain ID, which is also pretty important. Then there's a Telos symbol token. So the reason we do this is because this is the safest way for you to do it without making any specific mistakes. However, if I want to go ahead and add the Telos mainnet, I can just click approve and continue with this, but I can also do it manually, whereby if I come here, sorry about that, then I click add network, I can basically go ahead and do so manually as well, because you'll see the option to do that down here. If I want to add the network manually, I'll just input the same details that I saw here when I click this pop-up, and basically input it in the fields where I'm being asked. So what I'll just do, I'll copy that URL. Let me just do it manually for everyone can be able to view. Then if I come back here, for example, it was a Telos EVM mainnet, I believe. Yep. Then I'll copy paste the RPC URL here as well. As we saw, the chain ID is 40. For the testnet, it's 41. Then the symbol is TLOS, or basically Telos. Once I'm done with that, I'll basically be able to save this and add this network. It'll give me the option to switch to the mainnet, so which I'll do so as well. And you'll see that I'll still have the accounts listed here as well. So if I check on this account 1, you'll find that I'll still have 0 tokens, but if I switch to the testnet, you'll basically be able to see that it'll update. Sorry about that. So these are the tokens that you'll be able to view on this specific page or setup. So a word of advice, okay, this is a personal rule for me. When I'm using my PC, I only use my test accounts, whether it's on MetaMask, Phantom, Nami, whichever network it is as well. Because being a dev, sometimes you can forget. You can end up using your test, your mainnet accounts in your test environment. Then you realize you've actually spent so much money without realizing it. So I usually keep it in terms of, if it's on my PC, it's on the testnet. That's basically a rule that I have for myself. Just a word of advice for anyone else who might make the same mistakes that I do. So since that was basically how we go about adding the network to the MetaMask wallet, what I'm gonna go ahead and do is, how do I actually fund an account now? So if I go to this second account, as you can see, I currently don't have any tokens on Telos. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that, and actually I should also just be putting these links in the chat. So here's the link to Chainlist as well. in case you want to view the Telos networks. Then, yeah, let me just add that. So chain list is what you'll use just to view more info, details about the network as well. Then another thing would now be the next link that we'll be talking about in terms of what we actually use to receive tokens on our test network. So there's Telos has a testnet faucet. Faucet meaning just like any tap that you may have in your house. It basically gives the tokens to any test account, so users can actually use them to build and develop and test the different applications as well. So what I'm going to do is let me go ahead and copy this address again. I think so I'll do that. So it gives you a number of options. Firstly, if you don't already have a testnet account, you can create one here as well. Then maybe have a couple of keys, then you recreate that account for yourself. Then you'll find that there are two different options here. There's a send testnet for Telos, then there's a testnet EVM for Telos. So if you notice, these two specific testnets are different. One is for the EVM and perhaps one is for the native network as well. So this is the one that I'm concerned with. So this is where I'll paste my address that we've just seen here. So what I'll do is, let me just open the pop-up here as well. So as you can see, it's 0 Telos tokens. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send testnet EVM to Telos. Okay, so I already received funds on this account, on this particular wallet before, so I think it's not allowing me to at the moment. But basically what will happen is it will fund you with about 50 Telos tokens that you can then use for any tests that you have ongoing. So I'd really use it to fund this specific account. That's why it's here. The number of transactions already done, so that's why it's less than 50 at this point per se. So that's how you go about receiving test tokens. Maybe another thing I'd also like to mention is just let me share this link with you guys as well, just in the chat, so you can also interact with it in case you're following along or at any other point as well. So once we are done with that, we basically received those testnet tokens. So what I'd like to do next would be, we now need to see how do you actually interact with smart contract in the Telos ecosystem. So we've set up our wallet, we've funded our account, which are like the first two key and basic steps that you needed to go through as well. Then another thing I wanted to also talk about now would be, for example, maybe you're trying to set up your development environment, the different options that we have. You can go ahead and use Truffle or Hardhat, which can be able to help you develop them, maybe if you're more advanced, but you can still use it to get started. But you can also just use Remix, which is an online IDE that allows you to test out and write your smart contracts within that platform. The good thing is it's compatible with all EVM chains in that sense. So you find that, not all, but most, I guess, that you can use to basically just see how your smart contracts behave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and open the Remix platform just to show you how it looks specifically. So as it's opening up, you're seeing the icon there for Remix IDE. Yeah, so as usual, let me just go home so I'll be able to share this link with you as well. So here you go. Okay. So I think I'll just share this link here for you to take a look. So yeah, so as you can see here, you can be able to connect this with your GitHub as well as other IPFS accounts that you may be using, just to help you develop a bit more. So how it looks is I have a basic workspace that I've created. So what you'll find is in this folder is where you'll have your specific smart contracts. So for Remix, these are now the base smart contracts that come in. One for storage, one for owner, one for ballot, which we'll be able to just discuss a bit more on. Then these are now the scripts that you'll be using specifically if you want to deploy with whichever option you have here. These ethers.typescript, or there's the web3.typescript options as well. Then you can also write tests for your specific smart contracts as well. So those are just the basic folders that you would be interacting with as we continue. But another way of actually going about setting smart contracts up for yourself as well is using the Open Zeppelin wizard or contracts wizard. It basically helps you get started with the basics or simple smart contract that you can use to interact. So let me just take a step back and talk about Open Zeppelin briefly as well. What you'll find is that Open Zeppelin is basically a library that has been created and made available to developers to use when they're building the smart contracts. And you'll find that there are different standards for these specific smart contracts, which I'll just share with you. So if I go to the Open Zeppelin wizard, find that I'm also just sharing this link in the chat as well, so you can be able to take a look at it. It basically allows you to come up with a basic smart contract depending on the different type of token that you want. So the three tokens that you interact with the most as a Solidity dev or like a Web3 dev is three specific standards. There's the ERC20 standard. So we all hear about tokens and NFTs and everything. So these are the standards that help us create them. So for a normal token, or what we refer to as a fungible token, the standard it aligns with is ERC20. What that means is that, for example, for ERC20, is that you can have multiple identical tokens that you can now mint and be basically issued to other people, and you can also use them to transact for specific things as well. So basically it's kind of like the currency you're creating for your particular project. So for example, here I've written that I want to create a token called Memoi with the symbol MI, and this is now a normal ERC20 token. So that's now basically how you create a fungible token or a cryptocurrency within the Telos network. Another thing would be, secondly, there's the ERC721. So what this does is it now creates the NFTs, or to refer to as the non-fungible tokens, that being a specific standard. So what would happen is each and every token that is made using ERC721 is unique. It doesn't have any other copy of it in any other setting within the network. That's why you see the options here are a bit different. You see there's a base URI. So as you heard me mentioning about IPFS is a technology called the Interplanetary File System. So it's basically a way of storing files in a fairly decentralized way as well. So maybe an NFT doesn't specifically store the image or the asset, it will just store a reference to it as well within the particular blockchain network. In terms of that's how it works in terms of ERC721. 721. These were the earliest standards that were used when coming up with smart contracts, and they were the most friendly per se. However, as time goes by, things also develop and people also get better with different ways of coming up with tokens, and we realize that okay, why does it have to be two separate contracts? Why can't we just have one contract that can help me make both an NFT and also a normal cryptocurrency token? And that's how we arrived at ERC 1155. 1155 being the latest one. Basically, it can be able to help you to set up what type of token you want and with all the options here. So I'll go back to the normal cryptocurrency token that we may want to create and interact with as well. So as you'll find, the reason why this is such an amazing tool is because you can come up with the base template of your smart contract in terms of how you want it to operate. Then, if you want these tokens to be mintable, you click that, then you'll find the specific functions that are added that basically allow you to do that. If you want your tokens to be banned in any particular setting, you can find that they can also be done just by clicking on that. Then in terms of pausing the sorry about that functionality of the creation of these tokens, you can also click on that as well. Then automatically you can set owners for these tokens. So you see, if I click mintable, it means that the token will now automatically be ownable. You have to set who will this token be created for and who will own it, basically. And that's how this tool helps you do that or achieve that. So that's one way of coming up with the smart contracts as well. So what you can do is you can basically copy it, or you can just open this directly on on Remix as well. So if I click open in Remix, you'll find I already had the IDE open here, but as well just show you how it might look for this specific smart contract. Okay, so in code samples I already had two smart contracts here. Let me just click on them so you can see. So I had the GLD token, and then this is now the Memoi token, the one we just created basically. So I renamed the smart contract to be Memoi as well. Then the token is called Memoi and the sign is MI. And if I want to interact with it, I'll basically be calling this mint function from any application that I may be having. So that's how it would look on this Remix platform as well. Then what I can also do is show you basically how you go about compiling the smart contract. So compiling it means that you need to translate this code into something that the network or the technology will be able to understand. That's what it does. So what you'll find that you need to be careful about is, if you notice, I'll just show this first few lines here, basically describe what's happening. So the first line talks about something called pragma solidity. Then you'll see a number there, like 0.8.20. So every smart contract that's written in solidity, you need to specify that specific version. Once that version is specified, it basically tells them, okay, I want you to compile it based on this particular version. So if you see this sign up here, it basically means any compiler of a version that's greater than 0.8.20 is able to compile this smart contract. But if I switch it and I say something like this, where I say, let me just do this. Basically, if I put a sign like that or a sign like this, it basically says less than or greater than as well. Or you can actually make it to be a range of options as well, where I can now be able to say anything. For example, if I say greater than, or less than, then I say like 0.8 or 0.9.0, that's when you'll be able to find that, okay, maybe that's something you can look at as well. So that's other options that you can be able to set within the smart contract as well. So that's just something to note. You can also have an equals sign as well. They say it can be either greater or equal to 0.820, basically. This is important because as you go along, you'll find that sometimes you can be trying to write code or compile smart contracts in a version, then you'll find that the things are a bit depreciated as well. So as you see, I've said the version I want to use is, sorry, let me actually set it back. Yeah, anything greater than 0.820. So since I've said greater than, let's see if it will work if I try and compile it with the same version. So these are all the versions that are listed that are available on Remix. So I'll just try with something that's less than this, and we'll try and compile. I think it should bring me an error in terms of how it would behave. So if I go ahead and click on that, okay, actually it picked 8.23 automatically. So let me just remove auto compile. Then I actually revert again, and let's see how that would behave. Okay, so that's now in terms of, so you see it actually keeps denying it. So you'll find that the compiler still keeps reverting to 8.23, which is the latest, since it's greater than this as well. So that's just something to note, such that if you're trying to do this in your own development environment, you may run into a couple of issues. So if you see an error like that, don't be too surprised. The reason is because of the compiler version. So if I've gone ahead and compiled my smart contract, you'll see it listed here in terms of, these are all the contracts that have been compiled in terms of the ones that are being used by this specific smart contract. So you'll see there's ERC20 listed here. There's also the ownable contract as well, provided by OpenZeppelin as well. So you'll find that that's basically how it's helping you to do that. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and see if I want to deploy this smart contract. I need to pick the specific network that I want to use. So what I want to do is we created and added the network to MetaMask, I think at the beginning of this session. That's where you'll find I have this particular address. So what I want to do is, how do I connect my MetaMask to Remix and pick this account that I'll be using to publish the smart contract. So what I'm going to do here is, there are two options that I can use. I can either use the injected provider, which in this case would be MetaMask, or I can use the wallet connect option. So I'm just going to go ahead and try with both of them. So for MetaMask, I'm already connected. So you'll find that it will automatically pick the account. So you see 0x560, then it ends with a 4471. So if I compare that to what I have here in my network, it should fairly be the same. So yeah, 05x, let's see if we can hover. Yeah, it's basically the same thing. So there's also another thing to note. So I can go ahead and deploy this, but as you noticed, for this constructor, which is basically when this smart contract is run, this function is basically run as well. So what you'd find is I need to put in the address of who I want to own this particular let me say contract per se, in that sense. So what I'll do is I'll come here, then I'll click the address of the third account I basically created, the Telos 3. So since I've switched, what I'll do is I'll just copy this, then I'll put it here. of the initial owner, then that's when I'll be able to deploy it. So another thing you can also do, like I said, if you don't use MetaMask, you can use Wallet Connect. Actually, so it gives you the Wallet Connect option, which will give me this specific pop-up that we have here as well. So if I go ahead and click on this, is when you'll be able to find that it's going to give you specific options. So if I click on that, you'll see you can either scan it, or I can just click on what's installed on my browser as a extension. So I already have MetaMask installed, so it's already connected since I've done this before, so it doesn't give me the pop-up like it usually does. So even with this option, I can go ahead and deploy. But there's something I also want to mention with regards to the smart contracts. So sometimes you may get this error, not an error, but this warning on Remix that says infinite gas, then maybe it gives you a number. So Remix is currently updating the gas fee calculator. So sometimes it may not be able to accurately give you feedback on what the specific gas price might be. So sometimes it will work without an error, other times you might actually get an issue when you try and deploy this smart contract. So what I'm going to expect is, if I click on deploy, due to this I might get a pop-up saying something like gas, unable to calculate gas accurately or something like that. But sometimes it may also work. So that's why even during tomorrow's session, we'd look at how do we directly deploy these smart contracts from our own development environment. For you guys who will now be part of the hackathon as we're building, whichever ID you're using. Personally, I'll use Visual Studio. We're going to look at how do we also deploy these smart contracts from, or directly from now your command line, or basically your project per se. So if I go ahead and do this, like I mentioned, I think you may get a pop-up. Sorry, I think I picked the wrong one. Okay, let me go ahead and, I clicked the wrong one. So I'll click on this, then I'll put the address back. Then let's see, it should give me a different pop-up this time. So it will say creation of Memoi pending, then I'll see gas estimation error. So this can happen sometimes. It's not something that should alarm you too much, because it's something that was expected, but just to take note that it can happen sometimes. But what happens if you're able to compile your smart contracts, you can go ahead and actually test this on your own local environments as well. Another thing I'd like to mention is also in terms of what we'll be building for tomorrow's session. We'll be trying to build a simple NFT marketplace called Craftly. So basically we'll just have a marketplace that lists all the tokens that are there. Then we'll also have a smart contract that actually helps you mint that specific NFT as well. So that's what we'll be looking at tomorrow specifically. Then we'll see how to connect that to a basic front end. I'll share the repositories with you for the front end specifically, so we can see how to interact with it as well. So I think that was just it in terms of just showing you how to set this up. What I'm going to do briefly is maybe go through how to set up a development environment using Truffle. So Truffle has a number of boxes that you can use to basically set up your project on Solidity. But for this case, what I would do, or what I would recommend, is using the basic options that Truffle avails to you as well. So what I'm going to do is, let me just open my terminal on my desktop, then so we can take a look at how to go about that. So if you want to go about installing Truffle, as I may call it, they're basically commands that you may need to run. I won't run them myself because I already have Truffle installed. So maybe what I would do is just write down the command so you can take a look at it. Then from there, I'll tell you what it does. Then I'll also try and see how we can set up a project as well. So the first thing I want us to do is, for example, I would make a new directory here. Let me just expand this. So if I was to say mkdir, so that was in caps. Then I say, for example, Bootcamp. So I'm going to enter this directory. Just type cd, then Bootcamp. So if I want to install Truffle, if I hadn't installed it before, I'd basically do npm install, then -g. -g means global, meaning that I want it to be accessible from any point in my computer for this specific user per se. Then I'll say Truffle. Once it does that, it will basically install the tools that you may need for any particular development setup. The next thing that I'll do is I'll just do Truffle, then I do init. What it will do is, sorry, let me check. Perhaps I'm having an issue with that. Let me see if we can just open this on my VS Code. I think maybe way easier. Unless there's something, oh sorry, I think I've opened it on the wrong screen. Yeah, so if I come and I just move this here. Come and I do this. Truffle init. Let me just do, sorry about that. Yeah, so I'll open a new window just to show you how it looks on VS Code. So let's say I'll say I want to open the folder that I just created. Let me open it on this side, then I'll just be able to show you how that would work. Yeah, so managed to open it. So let me just move this back here. So once I've opened this folder, then I'll run the commands inside, because I think from here getting the Truffle tools will be way more. So what I'll do is I'll come and I'll type Truffle init. So what it does, it basically creates a basic scaffold of how we're going to be interacting with the smart contracts on now your local development environment, in case you want to go ahead using Truffle suite specifically. So Joanna, I don't know, can you see my screen now? I think I had moved it so I could just put some of my details and put it back. I think that's why you couldn't see it for like a few minutes there, but it's all good. So for example, here in this folder as well, I'll be able to put my smart contracts, then the migrations in terms of if I want to write any other scripts that will help me basically deploy on my smart contracts. Then here as well, I'll set up the configurations for how to basically interact with the Telos network. So this is what we're going to be looking at more in depth during tomorrow's session. But I just wanted to introduce you in terms of how it looks. So if I do that, this is basically how Truffle would look. And from here as well, be able to test and deploy all of those smart contracts as well, just in case you may also be having an issue with Remix as well. I will share resources in terms of looking at how to do this with Hard Hat as well, but I think I just focus on Truffle and Remix for now as specifically. So I think that was it in terms of my agenda. I think we'll be able to share with you all the environment setup guides that you may need, such that you, even during the last session of the bootcamp and the hackathon, you have access to all of this information to just help you get started as well. For me, I just wanted to introduce more about the environment, the tools, how to set up the wallet and get your specific tokens, and then also just give you a rundown of how exactly Remix looks and how you will work with that as well, and how to connect your MetaMask wallet to Remix as well. So I don't know if there are any questions or comments feel free to drop them in the chat. As usual, thank you for your time, guys. The recordings are always available, so you can always track back and just take a look and see what exactly we've been able to cover and what we've been able to discuss as well during the session. So thank you for your time. Hope you guys have a lovely day or evening, and as always, you can reach out on the Telegram groups or on the WhatsApp chats as well if you have any questions or challenges as well. Like I mentioned before, my calendar has also been shared with you guys, I believe. So if you want to set up a session with me, feel free to do so. So thank you guys.